The Narwhal Original Plus is a large vacuum filling fountain pen that's primarily made out of turned acrylic. And this specific pen is part of a limited 200-piece production run, which is being sold through Goldspot.com starting today. Thank you, Tom from Goldspot, for your generous donation to the channel and for trusting me with your product. This pen is part of a collaboration with McKenzie Penworks, who provided the diamond cast resin that we have here today. It's a fully opaque resin with swirls of teals, whites, purples, and golds, and it has a lot of shimmer throughout the entire pen. McKenzie Penworks refers to this resin as the Nebulosa Laguna, which pays homage to the Lagoon Nebula, and that's one of the few nebulae that is visible with the naked eye. A nebula is a cloud of interstellar gas which is responsible for forming stars, and for that reason they are often affectionately referred to as star nurseries. The top of the pen is rounded with a metal cap, and then we can see a bent metal clip, which is very much in that narwhal fashion. It is springy and functional, but it doesn't have a huge range of motion. The cap tapers down, widening to a cap band which reads Narwhal 2 times. The cap comes off in 1 and about 3/4 of a turn to reveal a stainless steel gold-plated nib. It features the Narwhal logo, scrollwork on the outside, as well as some depictions of spouts. And on the side, we can see the size of the tipping material. I have it in an M for medium, but it's available in a variety of other sizes. And on the back, we can see a black plastic feed. The section starts with a flare-up, and then it has a tapering profile to threads which are smooth to the touch. There's then a straight portion followed by a step up to the barrel, and the barrel is straight to a metal band followed by the end finial that has a rounded edge. As I mentioned, this is a vacuum filling system. To operate it, you unscrew the back piston knob. Doing so will release a shutoff valve inside the pen, which allows ink to flow between the barrel and the section. If I pull the rod back, we'll now have access to the filling system. Put the nib into ink and push down on the rod. Doing so creates a low pressure system inside the pen, and at the bottom of the stroke, that pressure breaks, allowing ink to flow into the pen body. I will note that the rod is quite stiff on this unit, and I don't know if that's specific to this pen or if that's common for all Original Pluses. The pen in the hand is a very comfortable length. It has good heft thanks to that vacuum filling system, and it's very well balanced. The cap does post securely, but not very deeply. It backweights the pen quite a bit and makes it quite long. Also, the cap does post on that piston knob, so if you're not careful, you could accidentally pull the rod up and create an inky mess. And for that reason, I don't really recommend posting your cap. In terms of size comparisons, here's the Narwhal Original Plus, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we disassemble the Original Plus, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with a few other vacuum filling fountain pens. Up top is the Peniter Avatar Twin Tank Touchdown. This is the only pen on the table with a spring-loaded clip, and it's also the only one that doesn't use a threaded back piston knob. This one has a spring-loaded bayonet-style locking mechanism. Just below that, we have the Pilot Custom 823, which is by far the most expensive pen on the table today, and it's also the only one with a gold nib, which we'll take a look at in just a second. Below the Pilot is the Asvine V126, which shares a lot of design similarities with the Pilot 823, but comes in at a fraction of the price. And at the bottom, we have the most compact vacuum filling fountain pen that I own, and perhaps that's on the market today. This is the TWSBI Vac Mini. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps removed. All caps screw to come off with the exception of the Peniter, which has a cap that is secured in place with a magnet. Let's take a closer look at these sections and nibs. All nibs are fully exposed and all are stainless steel with the exception of the Pilot. As I mentioned, this is a 14 karat gold nib. The middle 3 pens have fairly similar sections with a flare-up at the front followed by a taper to threads that are smooth to the touch. The Peniter has a section that is straight followed by a dramatic step up to the barrel, and the TWSBI is also straight with a flare-up to the barrel. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post securely, and the TWSBI is the only one that has a screw to post cap, and the Narwhal is the only one that has a cap that posts directly onto the piston knob. In order to disassemble the Original Plus, you are going to need an adjustable wrench, as well as some grippy materials. The cap unscrews, and if we take a look inside, we can see that there is no cap liner, but a pretty dramatic step up, and that's there to seal off the nib, which is great to see. That's a good use of a turned acrylic cap. What that means is we don't need to disassemble this any further for regular cleaning and maintenance. I would just simply run it under warm water or maybe soak it with a little bit of mild detergent. The grip section can be unscrewed from the barrel. And then if you want, you can remove the nib and feed by unscrewing it from the grip section. And we can see that those are held in place inside this nib collar. If you want to remove them, grab them with your grippy materials and give it a pull. And then the nib and feed just simply separate. Next, if you want, you can remove the filling mechanism as well. Give the piston knob a counterclockwise turn and pull it back. Doing so reveals two flats on this threaded piece. We can grab a hold of those with our wrench and then give it a counterclockwise turn. I do like to unscrew using the barrel instead of the wrench because it does prevent over torquing and possibly cracking the acrylic. Soon that piston unit can be removed along with the entire filling mechanism. And then we're just left with the barrel, which does have a step up. I don't know if you can see that on camera. It's right about there, which is there to relieve pressure so that you can use that vacuum filling system. At this point, the pen is fully disassembled. In order to reassemble, I'm going to take the barrel and the filling mechanism, place that through the back of the barrel, and screw it down. I'll grab my wrench to tighten it further. Again, turning with the barrel and not the wrench. At this point, we should have good suction. That sounds good, but it is quite stiff again. I have greased up this piston rod to try and help it, but it still is moving quite stiff, at least as far as vacuum fillers go. Next, let's do our nib and feed. There's nothing on the feed to orient the nib, so you're going to want to just align it the best you can. Try to take the shoulders of the feed and align it with the shoulders of the nib. And then if we look at the nib collar, there is a flat just there, which lines up with a flat on the feed, and that's really great to see. Those just slide into place. Since this nib collar unscrews from the grip section, when you're unscrewing it, having that key there will help prevent the feed and nib from freely rotating. And then we're going to just screw this back into our grip section. And then reattach that to our barrel. And lastly, our cap. And at this point, we're ready to ink up. All right, filling up the Narwhal Original Plus. Today I selected Oroshizuku Kujaku, which is a nice teal ink that I feel like matches the teal in this resin quite closely. We'll take the bottle cap off and the cap off the pen. Unscrew the back piston knob and pull the rod all the way back. Put the nib into the ink and push down on the rod. And go ahead and wipe off our ink. Cap up our bottle, as well as our pen. And at this point, we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Narwhal Original Plus. Cap unscrews, and I am going to unscrew the back piston knob to open up that shutoff valve to allow ink to flow between the barrel and the section. And today we have a stainless steel medium nib. And it's a really nicely tuned nib. It's smooth and wet with a moderate amount of feedback. I would say pretty comparable to the standard Jowo stainless steel nib. Unfortunately, it did not come out of the box this way. When I first got this pen, the tines were overly tight, and also the spacing was a little bit uneven. It was a bit tighter at the bottom of the nib compared to the top. I do have a writing sample from when I first got this pen. Unfortunately, it's on scratch paper, but you can see it's quite a bit drier, and I had some skipping on the downstrokes of these L's, as well as crossing this T. So I reached out to Goldspot to see if that is a common issue with Narwhal pens. I don't really have that much experience with this brand. And Goldspot said no, that actually they rarely get any negative feedback regarding the Narwhal nibs. So I guess this was a bit of unfortunate luck. And what I ended up doing to fix this nib is I grabbed the shoulders of the nib and gave them a slight pull in order to even out the spacing on those tines. And then I also took some brass shims and flossed the tines in order to even out the spacing throughout. Now that I did, it's a very reliable writer, very wet, and a joy to use. In terms of our ink, today we have an Oroshizuku, which is made by Pilot. And it's called that's a U, Jaku. For flex, I'll turn the page. Sorry, that was me at the beginning. You can push out a little bit of line variation, but it's a pretty stiff steel nib. I wouldn't expect it to be a flex by any means. For reverse writing, quite smooth. And the feed is keeping up great. Of course, with the caveat that I did personally tune this nib, so your mileage may vary when it comes to reverse writing. But for this particular pen, you could use it for a bit of a thinner line. So what do I think of the Narwhal Original Plus? I really like this pen. I love that it's a vacuum filling fountain pen. That's one of my favorite filling systems because it is very convenient to use. You simply use one stroke to get a full fill. Also, it's a very safe unit to use for traveling because it does have that shutoff valve to help regulate the amount of ink flowing into the grip section. And this particular pen I find to be very comfortable. I love the grip section. It's quite long. The threads are smooth to the touch, and it has a variety of different thicknesses, so it's pretty easy to find an area that's comfortable to grip. And then naturally, I think the standout feature for this particular pen is the resin. It's an absolutely beautiful resin with different swirls of colors and shimmer throughout. I really find it quite captivating when I have it in my hand. But I also do see areas for improvement with this pen, and actually the resin is one of them. Because it's a vacuum filling fountain pen, I wish this resin was a little bit transparent, or at least that there was an ink window included, and that's for a few reasons. One, it has a huge ink supply, which is a great thing, but that also means that you're probably not going to fill this pen up very often, and it's pretty easy to lose track of how much ink is actually in the barrel. Also, because it has that shutoff valve, that makes it a little bit challenging to regulate the amount of ink that's in the section and monitor it. So what I find when I'm writing with this pen is I either religiously unscrew the back piston knob in order to allow ink to flow through, or I'm writing with it and eventually I find that the ink is running dry, and that's my cue to open up the piston rod. And in my opinion, that's a little bit late. In terms of other areas to improve with this pen, I did mention that the cap posts securely, but not very deeply. It makes the pen very long and kind of back-weighted in my medium-sized hands. Also, the cap does post on the piston knob, which means if you have the pen inked, you could have a pretty big mess on your hands if it pulls the rod out. So not the greatest poster, but I don't think that that's a deal breaker. A lot of people don't post their caps, and I'm one of them for most of my pens. And then lastly, the build, fit, and finish seems really high quality on this pen. It feels very premium in the hand, and I don't really see any bad gaps or alignment issues. But the rod on the filling unit is quite stiff, and I don't know if it's because of the resin that was used or if that's common for Original Plus models in general. But overall, I think it is a fantastic pen. Again, it uses a really great filling system that gives you a huge supply of ink, and it's a safe filling system to use both for long writing sessions as well as for air travel. It's comfortable in the hand, and the overall resin is absolutely gorgeous. If you love swirls of colors and shimmery resins, this one has it in spades. And in general, if you're a big fan of the cosmos and astrology or astronomy, this also may tickle your fancy because it is stylized after the Lagoon Nebula. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.